My son said, "Stop wasting money," and smirked like he'd finally put me in my place. The next morning, before sunrise, I emptied his accounts. Every dollar he'd stolen, every cent he thought he controlled, and disappeared. Not out of fear, out of preparation, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? It started 3 nights before that. Thursday evening, late October in Portland, when the rain comes sideways and the Douglas firs turn black against the sky. I pulled up to Kellan's house in my 15-year-old pickup, the one with the toolbox bolted to the bed and the faint smell of cedar mulch that never quite washes out. The house stood on a corner lot in Laurelhurst, all modern angles and floor-to-ceiling windows. Worth maybe $1 million too? I knew because I'd helped him with the down payment 4 years back. Helped. That's a gentle word for what actually happened. I'd liquidated a chunk of my retirement because Kellan said it was an investment opportunity, a stepping stone. I should have known better. I rang the doorbell. Through the frosted glass panel, I could see movement. I hear Lana's voice rising in that particular pitch she used when annoyed. The door opened. "Tanner." Lana stood there in athleisure wear that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She didn't say dad or come in or anything remotely warm. Just my first name, flat as plywood. "You're early." Traffic was light. She stepped aside without smiling. I walked into their foyer. Marble tile, a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a hotel lobby, a console table with unopened mail and investment newsletters. The expensive kind that promise insider knowledge and deliver nothing but anxiety. "Kellan's in the den," Lana said, "making calls." I walked through their open-concept living room, past the white leather sectional and the 80-inch television. Kellan sat at a glass desk, phone pressed to his ear, staring at a laptop. He saw me, held up one finger. "Wait." I waited. He was 35, but looked older under the recessed lighting. Thinning hair he tried to hide with expensive product. Lines around his mouth from clenching his jaw too much. He wore a dress shirt with rolled sleeves, trying to project the image of a man who worked hard, who earned things. I knew different. He ended the call, stood up, and walked around the desk. "Dad." He gave me a brief, stiff hug, the kind you give someone at a memorial gathering when you're supposed to show emotion but don't actually feel any. "Kellan." "Dinner's almost ready. Lana made reservations at that new place downtown, but I told her you'd probably prefer something low-key." Low-key meant cheap. I understood the translation. We sat at their dining table, expensive live-edge walnut, probably $8,000, and Lana brought out pasta primavera and arugula salad. The meal was fine. The conversation wasn't. "So how's the landscape business?" Lana asked, subtle emphasis on landscape, slight downturn of her mouth that said what she really thought. "Steady. Just finished a restoration project up in Forest Park. Native plant installation, erosion control." "That sounds rustic." Kellan laughed. "Not real. A performance." "Landscaping isn't real architecture, though, is it?" Lana continued. She sipped her wine. "I mean, it's more like gardening?" I could have corrected her. Could have explained that landscape architecture requires a state license, 4 years of college, 3 years apprenticing. Could have mentioned the commercial projects, the parks and corporate campuses that still stood because I'd understood hydrology and soil composition. Instead, I said, "It pays the bills." "Barely, I bet." Lana smiled when she said it, like that made it okay. Kellan shifted in his chair. I waited for him to defend me, to tell his wife that maybe she should show respect for the man who'd raised him alone after his mother passed, who'd worked 70-hour weeks to keep him in private school. He didn't say anything. We ate in silence. Then Lana started talking about some influencer she followed, some woman who made money posting pictures of breakfast and yoga mats. I half listened. Mostly I watched Kellan. He was nervous, bouncing his leg under the table, glancing at his phone every 30 seconds. The signs were obvious if you knew what to look for. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine, yeah, just busy with work." "What kind of work?" "Client stuff, proposals, the usual." Kellan ran what he called a design consultancy. As far as I could tell, it mostly involved posting renderings on Instagram and talking about sustainable urban planning. "How's that eco-park project coming?" I asked. I knew about it because he'd mentioned it 6 months ago, said it was going to be his breakthrough. His jaw tightened. "Still in development." "Permitting issues?" "Something like that." Lana stood abruptly. "I'll get dessert." After she left, Kellan leaned back and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite name. Resentment, maybe, or embarrassment. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." Here it comes, I thought. The money you've been spending. What money? Your money, your savings. Lana and I have noticed, you're not being very smart about it. I set down my fork carefully. Smart how? You're 61. You should be thinking about retirement, about long-term care. I am retired. You're still working. Because I like working. He sighed, the sigh of a parent dealing with a stubborn child, which was rich considering I was the parent. You're wasting money on that truck, on tools, on whatever else. You need to be more conservative. Conservative? Responsible. I felt something shift in my chest, a small crack, like ice breaking. You want to talk about responsibility? Kellan's eyes went hard. Don't start. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking a question. This isn't about me. Isn't it? Lana returned with tiramisu in small glass cups. She sensed the tension immediately, looked between us, set the dessert down without a word. Kellan stood up. You know what, Dad? I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to make sure you don't end up broke and alone because you can't stop spending money on projects that don't matter. Projects that don't matter. You know what I mean. No, explain it to me. His face flushed. You're embarrassing us. There it was. The truth. How exactly am I embarrassing you? You drive that piece of garbage truck. You work in the dirt. You look like... He stopped himself, but not fast enough. Lana touched Kellan's arm. Babe, maybe... He shook her off. You look like a landscaper, Dad. Like someone who couldn't make it in the real world, so he plays in the dirt and calls it a career. The room went quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming. Outside, a car drove past, headlights sweeping the windows. I stood slowly. I'm going to leave now. Dad. No. You've said enough. Kellan ran his hand through his hair. Look, I didn't mean... I'm stressed, okay? There's a lot going on, and I need... What do you need, Kellan? He glanced at Lana. She nodded. I need access to the reserve account. The reserve account. The joint account I'd set up 15 years ago for emergencies. About $48,000 in it. Money I'd saved from jobs, from selling my old house. For what? That's not really your business. It's my money. It's our money. You put my name on the account. For emergencies. This is an emergency. What kind of emergency requires $48,000? He didn't answer. Lana looked away. I understood then. Saw the whole picture. The expensive house, the leased cars, the designer clothes, the unopened bills, they were drowning. Had been for a while. And instead of facing reality, they'd decided to solve their problems with my money. No, I said. Kellan's face went white. What? I said no. Dad, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You've spent yourself into a hole and you want me to fill it. The answer is no. You owe me. Those 3 words, simple, devastating. I owe you. Yes. For everything. For how you raised me, for making me... Making you what? Nothing. Forget it. He was shaking now, hands clenched. Just stop wasting money, Dad. Stop pretending you're still relevant. Stop acting like you matter, and give me what I need. Lana smiled. Actually smiled. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I'd sacrificed for, and I didn't recognize him anymore. Okay, I said quietly. Kellan blinked. Okay? Okay. I walked to the door, got my jacket. Kellan followed me, suddenly uncertain. What does okay mean? I opened the door. The rain had started again, cold and clean. It means you're right. I've been wasting money. Time to stop. So you'll transfer. Good night, Kellan. I left. Drove home through wet streets, parked in my driveway and sat in my truck for 20 minutes, listening to rain hammer the roof. Inside my house, a small craftsman in Selwood, paid off, nothing fancy. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table. I didn't sleep, didn't try to. Instead, I opened my laptop and started working. By 3 a.m, I'd transferred every dollar from every account Kellan had access to into a new account at a different bank, revoked his authorized user status, changed all my passwords, canceled the credit card I'd given him for emergencies that was now maxed out with restaurant and clothing charges. By 4, I'd backed up all my files to an encrypted drive. By 5, I'd packed a bag with clothes, tools, documents. By 6, I'd loaded my truck. At 6:30, just as the sun started to gray the sky, I wrote a note on paper and left it on my kitchen counter, held down by a coffee mug. You should have respected the hands that built your world. Then I locked my house, climbed into my truck, and drove away from Portland. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't coming back. The highway stretched east through the Columbia River Gorge. I drove without stopping, letting muscle memory handle the steering while my mind sorted through 35 years of fatherhood. The rain stopped past Hood River. By the time I crossed into Idaho, the sky had cleared to that hard blue you only get at altitude. I stopped for gas in Boise, ate a sandwich, kept driving. Kellan would have woken up by now. Would have checked his accounts, seen the zeros, felt that first spike of panic. Good. Let him panic. I reached Denver just after midnight. Found a motel off I-70, the kind with exterior doors and a neon sign that buzzed like a trapped hornet. Paid cash. The clerk didn't ask questions. The room smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. I dropped my bag on the bed, stood at the window looking out at the parking lot. My phone sat in my pocket, turned off. I'd shut it down outside Pendleton and hadn't touched it since. I slept 4 hours and woke to gray dawn. Showered, dressed. Sat on the bed and stared at my hands. Scarred from years of working with stone and wood, stained under the nails no matter how hard I scrubbed. Hands that had built things, fixed things, created spaces where people could breathe. Hands my son thought looked like failure. I turned on my phone. It took 3 minutes to boot up. Another 2 for messages to flood in. 73 missed calls, 41 voicemails. Text messages that started with confusion and escalated to anger. Dad, where are you? Call me back. This isn't funny. What did you do with the money? You can't just take everything. I deleted them without reading past the first few. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 3 years, Lorna Helder. We'd worked together back when I was on the state licensing board, reviewing applications for landscape architecture certification. Lorna was sharp as a razor and twice as mean when she needed to be. She'd left Portland about the same time I did, moved to Denver to work as a consultant for municipalities. The phone rang 4 times. This is Lorna. It's Tanner Walden. Silence. Then, well, heck of a voice from the past. You in town? I am. Business or pleasure? Neither. Can we meet? She gave me the address of a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. I got there first, ordered black coffee, sat in a corner booth where I could see the door. Lorna arrived 15 minutes later wearing a charcoal suit and an expression that said she already knew something was wrong. She slid into the booth. You look terrible. Thanks. What happened? I told her. Not everything, but enough. The dinner, the insults, the demand for money, the realization that my son saw me as nothing more than a resource to be extracted and discarded. Lorna listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back. So, you cleaned out the accounts and ran. I took what was mine. And now you're here because... I don't know yet. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Yes, you do. You wouldn't have called me if you were just running. You want something. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. What do you know about municipal contracting fraud? Her eyebrows went up. That's quite a pivot. Is it? What are you asking me, Tanner? I'm asking if someone used another person's professional credentials to bid on a city contract, what would happen if that got exposed? Lorna went very still. Kellan? Kellan. What contract? Eco Park renewal in Portland, Southeast District. He mentioned it 6 months ago, said it was going to establish his firm. I didn't think much of it then, but now you're wondering if he used your license number on the bid documents. I'm not wondering. I'm pretty sure. She pulled out her phone, typed something, scrolled. Southeast District Eco Park. That's a $3.2 million contract, funded by city and state environmental grants. She looked up. If he forged credentials on a project that size, it's not just fraud. It's federal, because of the grant money. What happens to him if it comes out? Criminal charges, possible prison time, definitely career destruction. The licensing board would make an example of him. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just cold certainty. Can you find proof? Lorna set down her phone. Why are you really here, Tanner? This sounds less like protecting yourself and more like planning something. I'm planning to make sure the truth comes out. The truth or revenge. Is there a difference? She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I can pull the bid documents, public records. If your credentials are on them without authorization, I'll know within 48 hours. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If I do this, I'm doing it because fraud makes me angry, not because I'm helping you settle a family grudge. Understand? I understand. Good. She stood. Where are you staying? I gave her the motel name. That place is a roach factory. She drove me to an extended stay hotel near the tech center, paid for 2 weeks up front with her corporate card, Told the desk clerk I was a consultant on one of her projects. I tried to argue. She shut me down. You helped me pass the licensing exam 20 years ago. I don't forget debts. In the room, clean, quiet, impersonal, I unpacked and sat on the bed, turned on the television without watching it. My phone buzzed. Kellan. I let it ring. It kept ringing for the next 6 hours. I ignored every call. Around 8 that evening, a text came from a number I didn't recognize. This is Lana. Kellan is a mess. Whatever you're doing, stop. Be the bigger person. He's your son. I stared at that message for a full minute. Be the bigger person. As if I hadn't been the bigger person for 35 years. I typed back, he stopped being my son when he decided I was an embarrassment. Then I blocked her number. The next morning, Lorna called. I've got the documents. We met at Lorna's office, a converted warehouse in Rhino with exposed brick and industrial lighting. She spread the bid documents across a conference table. Look at Section 7, subsection B. I looked. There it was, my license number, my credentials, my professional seal. I never authorized this. I know, I checked with the board. No record of you signing off on any project proposals for the last 18 months. So it's fraud. Textbook. I sat down heavily. Seeing it in black and white made it real in a way it hadn't been before. My son had stolen my identity, not for some desperate emergency, but to prop up his failing business. There's more, Lorna said. She pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. I did some digging into his firm's financial records. Public filings, tax documents, business licenses. Tanner, he's buried. Obligations exceed assets by almost $500,000. Most of his listed clients are either defunct or never existed. His entire business is smoke. What about the house? Mortgaged heavily. Second mortgage taken out 8 months ago. They're 3 payments behind. And Lana? Lorna smiled grimly. Social media influencer with 14,000 followers. Except about 80% are artificial accounts. I ran the analytics. She's been buying engagement for years. Her sponsorship deals are tiny, maybe $1,500 a month total. Barely covers her wardrobe budget. I closed my eyes. They're drowning. They've been drowning for a while. Your money was the life preserver they were counting on. What happens now? That depends on what you want to happen. I opened my eyes. I want everyone to know who they really are. That's scorched earth, Tanner. Good. Lorna leaned against the table. Okay, but if we're doing this, we do it right. Methodical. No half measures. I'm listening. She spent the next hour outlining a plan. It was elegant in its simplicity. We wouldn't attack Kellan directly. We'd let the systems he'd tried to exploit handle him instead. First, we'd file a formal complaint with the state licensing board. Lorna would submit the evidence anonymously, let the investigation unfold naturally. Second, we'd alert the city auditor's office about potential fraud in the eco-park contract. Again, anonymously. Third, and this was Lorna's touch of genius, we'd leak information about Kellan's fabricated business credentials to a journalist she knew at the Portland Tribune, someone who specialized in exposing grift in the sustainability industry. It'll take time, Lorna said. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. But when it arrives, it'll arrive everywhere at once. I can wait. What about Kellan? What about Lana? What about them? They're going to keep calling, keep trying to find you. I thought about that. Let them. The complaint went to the licensing board on a Wednesday. Lorna filed it through a secure portal, attached all evidence, marked it urgent. By Friday, an investigator had been assigned. The city auditor took longer. Municipal bureaucracy moves at its own pace. But Lorna knew someone in the comptroller's office, called in a favor, made sure the fraud allegation landed on the right desk. Meanwhile, I existed in strange limbo. I woke each morning in the extended stay hotel, made coffee in the little kitchenette, sat by the window watching Denver wake up. Sometimes I'd walk through neighborhoods I didn't know, past houses where families lived normal lives. My phone had gone quiet. Kellan had stopped calling after the first week. I checked his social media once. A mistake. He'd posted a photo of himself at his desk, captioned something about perseverance during challenging times. 200 likes, 50 comments, mostly generic encouragement from people who didn't know him. Lana posted more frequently, pictures of her morning smoothie, her yoga mat, a quote about staying positive. Her engagement was low. I could see what Lorna meant about the artificial followers. I didn't feel sorry for them. 2 weeks after I'd left Portland, Lorna called. The board investigator reached out to Kellan. Already? They move fast when there's clear evidence. He's scheduled for an interview next Monday. What happens at the interview? They'll ask him about the Eco Park bid, ask him how he obtained your credentials, give him a chance to explain. And when he can't, then they forward it to the state attorney general's office. I thanked her and hung up, sat for a long time staring at nothing. Monday came. I imagined Kellan in some sterile office, sweating under fluorescent lights, trying to talk his way out of the obvious truth. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Walden? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. Yes. This is Emily Brennan with the Portland Tribune. I'm working on a story about fraud in municipal contracting, and your name came up. Do you have a few minutes? Lorna's journalist. I might. I understand your professional credentials were used without authorization on a recent city contract bid. That's correct. Were you aware this was happening? No, I discovered it after the fact. How did you discover it? I chose my words carefully. I became suspicious of my son's business practices and did some investigating. Your son being Kellan Walden? Yes. And you're stating he forged your credentials? I'm stating facts. My credentials were used. I didn't authorize it. That's fraud. She asked more questions. I answered honestly, without embellishment. The truth was damaging enough. Before she hung up, she said, This story runs Wednesday. You might want to prepare yourself. For what? Blowback. Your son isn't going to take this quietly. I'm counting on it. The story went live at 6 a.m. Wednesday. Lorna sent me the link. Local designer accused of credential fraud in multi-million-dollar city contract. Below the headline was a photo of Kellan from his website, professional headshot with a confident smile. The article was thorough and devastating. It outlined the Eco Park contract, explained the bidding process, detailed the evidence that Kellan had forged credentials. It quoted the licensing board's spokesperson saying an investigation was ongoing. It mentioned the city was reviewing all of Kellan's previous contracts. And it quoted me, identified as the victim of the fraud. I trusted my son. That trust was misplaced. My phone started ringing at 6:15. I let it ring. By noon, the story had been picked up by the Oregonian and 2 Portland television stations. By evening, it was trending on local social media. People who'd never heard of Kellan Walden were suddenly experts on his failings. Lorna called. You see the coverage? I saw. How do you feel? I don't know yet. Kellan's been trying to respond on social media. It's not going well. I looked. She was right. Kellan had posted a long, rambling statement about misunderstandings and procedural errors and cooperating fully with investigators. The comments were brutal. Lana had deleted her Instagram. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, the licensing board announced they were suspending Kellan's credentials pending the investigation outcome. The city auditor released a statement saying they were examining all contracts associated with his firm and would seek restitution for any fraudulent claims. The walls were closing in. The follow-up article ran the next Tuesday. It was comprehensive. Pattern of deception. How one designer built a career on lies. The journalist had done her homework. She'd tracked down 8 former clients, all with similar stories. Kellan had taken their money, deposits ranging from $5,000 to $20,000, promised custom landscape designs, and either delivered substandard work or vanished. One woman had hired him to design her backyard 3 years ago. He'd cashed her check, sent preliminary sketches, then stopped responding. I thought he was just busy, the woman said. I didn't realize he was a con artist. The story detailed how Kellan had used my credentials on at least 4 projects without permission, how he'd inflated his resume with fabricated awards and non-existent certifications, how his social media presence was carefully curated fiction, and it quoted Lana, this surprised me, who'd apparently agreed to an interview from Seattle. I didn't know the extent of it, she told the journalist. Kellan kept the finances separate, but looking back, the signs were there. I should have asked harder questions. Translation. She was distancing herself, rewriting history so she looked like a victim instead of an accomplice. The article ended with another quote from me. My son had every opportunity to build something real. He chose shortcuts instead. That's not my failure, it's his. Within hours, the story had gone regional. By evening, financial fraud blogs and contractor watchdog sites were discussing it. Someone created a discussion thread that got 12,000 responses. Kellan's life was being dissected in real time by strangers. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Walden? This is Detective Carver with the Portland PD Fraud Division. I need to ask you some questions about your son's business practices. They kept me on the phone for an hour. I told them everything I knew, gave them access to my records, my files, anything that might help build a case. After I hung up, I sat in the hotel room feeling strange. Not guilty, not satisfied, just empty. Lorna texted, "Saw the article. You good?" I typed back, "Define good." She called instead of texting. "This is bigger than you thought it would be, isn't it?" "Yeah." "Second thoughts?" I considered lying. "No, he earned this." "There's a difference between justice and destruction?" "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, they look pretty similar." She sighed. "I've been thinking about what comes next." "What do you mean?" "I mean, eventually you'll need to decide what you want, because this can keep escalating or it can resolve. Your choice." "What's left to escalate?" "Tanner, the state attorney general, is filing charges. 6 counts of fraud, 2 counts of identity misuse. If convicted on all counts, Kellan's looking at serious prison time." The words hung in the air. "When's the arraignment?" I asked. 2 weeks." "Okay." "Just okay? What else is there to say?" Lorna was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. What do you actually want here? Because if it's just punishment, you've already won. His career is over, his reputation is destroyed, his marriage is finished, you've taken everything from him that mattered. Good. Is it? Because you don't sound satisfied. You sound hollow. Maybe I was. Maybe sitting 2 states away from the wreckage was finally catching up with me." "There's something else," Lorna said. "Something I haven't told you yet." "What?" "The Portland Green Tech Summit. It's in 3 weeks. Big industry event, televised locally. Architects, influencers, municipal officials, and Kellan, before all this exploded, was scheduled to present. He'll cancel." "That's the thing. He hasn't. According to the event coordinator I talked to, he's still listed as a keynote speaker. Topic, revolutionary urban ecopark design." I sat up straighter. "He's going through with it." "Apparently. I think he's desperate to salvage something. Prove he's not finished. Or he's delusional. Either way, it's an opportunity." "For what?" Lorna's voice went cold and calculating. "For you to finish what you started, publicly, definitively, in front of everyone who matters in your industry." I understood what she was suggesting. A final confrontation. Not hidden behind anonymous complaints and leaked documents, but face to face, in front of cameras and colleagues and the entire Portland design community. How would that work? "Leave that to me. I know people who know people. I can get you into that summit. I can make sure you have access to the presentation hall. What happens after that? That's up to you." I thought about it. Thought about Kellan standing on a stage, trying to present stolen work, trying to rebuild his shattered image. Thought about stepping out of the shadows and confronting him in the one place where his humiliation would be complete and permanent. "Do it," I said. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "Tanner, once you do this, there's no going back. This isn't anonymous anymore. This is you, publicly destroying your own son." "He destroyed himself. I'm just making sure everyone sees it." Lorna exhaled slowly. "Okay, I'll make the arrangements. But I need you to understand something. When this is over, people are going to judge you. Some will say you did the right thing, others will say you went too far, you need to be ready for that." "I'm ready." We hung up. I sat in the hotel room as evening shadows stretched across the floor. 3 weeks until the summit, 3 weeks to prepare, 3 weeks until I ended this. The days crawled by with agonizing slowness. I stayed in Denver, kept my head down, avoided anything that might alert Kellan to my plans. Lorna worked her connections, pulled strings, called in favors. "You're registered as my +1, she told me over coffee one morning. "The event coordinator thinks you're a consulting partner on one of my municipal projects. You'll have full access to the venue." "What about security?" "I've handled it. You'll get a badge, a lanyard, the whole thing. Just don't draw attention until the right moment." "And when is the right moment?" Kellan presents at 2 p.m. Main stage, full audience, live streaming to local architecture firms and city planning departments. About 400 people in the room, maybe another 1,000 watching online. 400 people, 1,000 more online. The entire Portland design community would witness what I was about to do. "What's the setup?" I asked. "Standard keynote format. Kellan will have 30 minutes. Slides, probably some video, the usual presentation elements. He'll be using the venue's AV system, which means everything runs through their control booth." "Can you access the control booth?" Lorna smiled. "Already done. I know the technical director. Old colleague from my Portland days. He owes me a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind where he looks the other way when I upload some additional presentation files to the server." I understood. "You're going to hijack his presentation." Not hijack, augment. When the moment is right, those files will be ready to display. All you have to do is give the signal. What signal? You'll know when. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Gathered documents, organized evidence, created a comprehensive timeline of Kellan's fraud, every forged credential, every fabricated client, every manipulated financial record. Lorna helped me compile it into a presentation that was clear, devastating, and impossible to refute. We included screenshots of text messages where Kellan mocked me, emails where he discussed using my credentials without permission, financial records showing the depth of his fabrication, photos comparing his claimed projects with reality, buildings that didn't exist, parks that were never built, clients who'd never heard of him. "This is nuclear," Lorna said, reviewing the files. "You show this, and there's nothing left of him." That's the idea. 5 days before the summit, I got a call from Detective Carver. "Mr. Walden, I wanted to give you an update. The DA's office has reviewed our investigation, and they're moving forward with prosecution. Your son will be formally charged next month." "What are the charges?" 6 counts of fraud, 2 counts of identity misuse, 3 counts of obtaining money under false pretenses. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at 12 to 15 years. 12 to 15 years. My son, in prison for over a decade. Thank you for letting me know. There's something else. We've been monitoring your son's communications as part of the investigation. He's been trying to locate you, hired a private investigator, actually. You might want to be careful." "I will." After I hung up, I sat very still. Kellan was looking for me. Good. Let him look. In 5 days, he'd find me. Just not the way he expected. I flew to Portland the day before the summit. Stayed at a hotel downtown, different from any place Kellan might think to check. That night, I barely slept. Kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd move, when I'd strike. The morning of the summit, I dressed carefully. Nothing flashy. Dark pants, button-down shirt, sport coat. I wanted to blend in until the moment I didn't. Lorna met me in the hotel lobby at noon. "Ready?" "Ready." We drove to the convention center together. The Portland Green Tech Summit was already in full swing. Hundreds of people milling around exhibit booths, attending panel discussions, networking over coffee and pastries. The energy was optimistic, forward-thinking. Everyone talking about sustainability and innovation and the future of urban design. They had no idea what was about to happen. Lorna handed me my badge. "You're Dr. Tanner Walden, environmental restoration consultant. Anyone asks, you're here observing trends in municipal eco-projects." "Got it." "Kellan's presentation is in the main auditorium. I'd suggest you stay out of sight until he starts. Find a seat in the back, keep your head down. When he's about 15 minutes in, that's when you move." "What's the signal for the control booth?" She handed me a small remote, no bigger than a car key fob. "Press the button. The files will load automatically. The technical director will make sure they display on the main screens." I pocketed the remote. "Thank you, Lorna, for everything." "Don't thank me yet. This could go very wrong very fast." "I know." We split up. She went to mingle, keep up appearances. I drifted around the convention center, passing the time and avoiding the main auditorium. Around 1:30, I stepped into a restroom, splashed water on my face, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for 6 weeks. The final move in a game Kellan didn't even know we were playing. I thought about backing out. Thought about just leaving, letting the criminal charges do the work, avoiding the public spectacle. Then I remembered his face at dinner. The contempt, the casual cruelty, the way he'd smiled when he told me I was embarrassing. I dried my hands and walked to the auditorium. The main auditorium was already filling up. Rows of seats arranged theater-style, facing a large stage with massive LED screens on either side. Professional lighting, camera operators setting up equipment, a podium with microphone at center stage. I found a seat in the back row, far right side, partially obscured by a support column. From here, I had a clear view of the stage, but would be difficult to spot in the crowd. The room continued to fill. I recognized faces from my years in the industry. Colleagues, competitors, licensing board members, city officials, people I'd worked with, people who'd respected me, people who would witness what I was about to do. At 5 minutes to 2, Kellan appeared backstage. Even from a distance, I could see how much the last 6 weeks had changed him. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loose on his frame. His movements were jerky, nervous. He looked like a man barely holding himself together. Good. The event moderator took the stage, tapped the microphone. "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this year's Portland Green Tech Summit. Our next presenter needs no introduction to those familiar with innovative urban ecological design." Please welcome Kellan Walden, who will be discussing his revolutionary approach to metropolitan eco-park development. Scattered applause, not enthusiastic. Word had clearly spread about the fraud investigation, but Kellan walked onto the stage anyway, forced smile on his face, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. He reached the podium, adjusted the microphone. The screens behind him lit up with his presentation title, Urban Ecoparks, A New Paradigm for Sustainable City Living. "Thank you," he said. His voice wavered slightly. "I'm honored to be here today to share some groundbreaking work my firm has been developing." I watched him launch into his presentation. Slides showing rendered park designs, environmental impact projections, community engagement strategies. Every single image stolen from proposals I'd written years ago, slightly modified, rebranded as his original work. The audience watched politely, some took notes. Most looked skeptical. Kellan kept talking. "The key innovation here is the integration of native plant ecosystems with urban water management systems. By creating bioswales that follow natural drainage patterns." My own words, my own concepts, coming out of his mouth like he'd thought of them himself. I let him go for 12 minutes. Let him get comfortable. Let him think maybe he could pull this off. Maybe he could salvage his reputation. Then I stood up, started walking down the side aisle toward the stage. A few people noticed, turned to look. I kept walking, steady and deliberate. Kellan was mid-sentence when he saw me. "Which allows for better filtration of..." He stopped, went pale. The microphone picked up his sharp intake of breath. "Dad?" The word echoed through the auditorium. Heads turned, murmurs rippled through the crowd. I kept walking until I reached the stairs at the side of the stage. Started climbing. "What are you doing?" Kellan's voice, panicked, still amplified. "You can't. Security." But I was already on the stage, walking toward him. The audience was standing now, phones coming out, people confused and fascinated. I reached the podium, looked at my son. Up close, I could see the fear in his eyes. "Keep going," I said quietly. "Finish your presentation." "Dad, please..." I pulled the remote from my pocket, pressed the button. The screens behind Kellan went black. Then new images appeared, financial documents, bank statements, the eco-park bid with my credentials highlighted, text messages. The audience gasped. What is this?" Kellan turned to look at the screens, saw his own fraud displayed in 50-foot detail. "The truth," I said. I took the microphone from the podium, my voice now filling the room. "Everything you've been watching for the last 12 minutes, none of it is his. The designs, the concepts, the environmental strategies, he stole all of it. From me, from his own father." The screens cycled through more evidence, forged credentials, fabricated client lists, screenshots of Lana's messages about pushing me out. Kellan stumbled backward. "Stop this. Turn it off." But the technical booth wasn't listening to him. The presentation continued. Every lie exposed, every manipulation revealed. "You told me I was wasting money," I said, voice steady, cold. "You told me to stop acting like I mattered. You said I was embarrassing." The screens showed the text messages now. Kellan's words, preserved forever. "Dad looks pathetic in that truck. Can't believe I have to pretend he's successful. Just need him to transfer the money, then I'm done with him." The audience was silent, horrified, captivated. Kellan's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the edge of the stage, her head in his hands. "You built your entire career on my work," I continued. "My credentials, my designs, my reputation. And when I wouldn't keep funding your lies, you called me an embarrassment." I knelt down beside him, spoke quietly, but the microphone still picked it up. "You said I wasted money. Turns out, I wasted you." Kellan looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dad. Please." Too late. I stood, looked out at the audience. 400 faces staring back at me, cameras recording everything. "My name is Tanner Walden. I've been a licensed landscape architect for 36 years. I've designed parks, corporate campuses, environmental restoration sites across the Pacific Northwest, and for the last 6 years, my son has been systematically stealing my work, forging my credentials, and defrauding clients and municipalities." The screens showed more evidence, a timeline of fraud, comparison images of my original proposals next to Kellan's stolen versions. "I've provided all of this information to the State Licensing Board, the Portland Police Department, and the State Attorney General's office. Criminal charges are pending, but I wanted you all to know, everyone in this industry, exactly who Kellan Walden really is." Someone in the audience started to applaud, then another, then more. Not everyone. Some people looked uncomfortable, disturbed by the public nature of the confrontation, but enough people clapped that it filled the room. Kellan tried to stand. His foot caught on a cable. He stumbled, fell forward, crashed into the front row of seats. The fall wasn't bad, no real harm, but the cameras caught everything. The final humiliation. My son, literally falling off the stage, surrounded by evidence of his fraud. Lana had appeared from somewhere. She rushed toward Kellan, slipped on some scattered papers from his presentation folder, went down hard into an equipment case at the side of the stage. The crash echoed through the auditorium. She wasn't hurt, but she lay there for a moment, stunned and mortified. Security was finally moving. 2 guards headed toward the stage. But I wasn't done. I walked to the edge of the stage, looked down at Kellan, dazed, humiliated, surrounded by cameras and whispers and the complete destruction of everything he'd tried to build. I leaned down. The microphone was still live. My voice carried through the entire auditorium, broadcast to every live stream viewer, recorded by every phone. This is the last time you'll ever stand over me. The security guards reached the stage. One touched my elbow. Sir, you need to leave. I handed him the microphone, straightened my jacket, walked calmly down the stage stairs while the auditorium erupted into chaos behind me. People shouted questions, cameras flashed. Kellan was still on the floor, Lana trying to help him up, both of them looking shattered and small. I kept walking. Through the side exit, into the corridor, past confused attendees who'd heard the commotion but hadn't seen what happened. Behind me, I could hear the moderator trying to restore order, asking people to please remain calm, announcing an unscheduled break. Lorna met me near the convention center entrance. That was intense. It's done. It's definitely done. Come on, let's get you out of here before the real media circus starts. We walked to her car. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I felt nothing. No triumph, no guilt. Just a strange emptiness, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that now, without it, I didn't know how to move properly. Lorna drove us away from the convention center. We didn't speak for several blocks. Finally, she said, "You know it's already online, right? Multiple live streams caught the whole thing. It'll be everywhere by tonight." "I know. And you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with it." She pulled into a coffee shop parking lot, turned off the engine, looked at me. "What now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what happens now, Tanner? You've exposed him, humiliated him, destroyed any chance he had of rebuilding. The criminal charges are still coming, his marriage is over, his career is finished, you've won. So what now?" I stared out the windshield at nothing in particular. "I go home. To Portland? To Selwood? To my house? To my life. And if people judge you for this, let them judge." Lorna nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the comfortable thing, but the right thing." "You think so?" "He built his entire existence on lies and manipulation. He used you, stole from you, and showed you zero respect. Someone needed to stop him. You just happened to be the only one willing to do it publicly." I thought about that. Maybe. We sat in silence for a moment. Then my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "I hope you're satisfied. You destroyed your own son. What kind of father does that?" I deleted it without responding. More messages came in, some supportive, some angry. I turned off my phone. "Want to get coffee?" Lorna asked. "No, I want to go home." She drove me to my hotel. I packed my bag, checked out, drove my truck out of the parking garage. Portland felt different now. The streets looked the same, but my relationship to them had changed. I wasn't running anymore, wasn't hiding. I was just a man driving home. I reached Selwood just after 5. My house stood exactly as I'd left it 6 weeks ago. Small, paid off, nothing special. I unlocked the door, stepped inside. The note I'd left on the kitchen counter was still there. "You should have respected the hands that built your world." I picked it up, read it one more time, then crumpled it and threw it away. That night, I sat on my back porch with a beer, watching the sun set behind the trees. My phone stayed off. The world could talk about what happened at the summit all it wanted. I was done performing. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, read the news on my laptop. The summit confrontation was everywhere. Portland Tribune ran a front-page story. Father exposes son's fraud in dramatic public confrontation. The Oregonian's headline was more neutral. Landscape architect reveals family rift over professional misconduct. Video clips had gone viral. Millions of views. Commentary from design professionals, legal experts, ethics professors. Some called me brave, others called me vindictive. Most just called it sad. I didn't read the comments. Around 10, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the window and saw a man in his 50s holding a notebook. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Walden, I'm Greg Martinez with Channel 8 News. I was hoping to get a statement from you about yesterday's events." "No statement. Just a few questions." "No statement. Please leave my property." He left. 2 more reporters showed up that afternoon. I ignored them both. By evening, they'd given up. The news cycle was already moving on to the next story, the next scandal, the next spectacle. I spent the next few days quietly. Worked in my yard, cleaned up the neglect from 6 weeks away. A neighbor stopped by, Mrs. Chen from across the street, mid-70s, kind eyes. "Tanner, I saw the news. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen." "I can't imagine how difficult this must be. Family is complicated." "It is." She squeezed my hand. "If you need anything, a meal, company, someone to talk to, you know where I am." "Thank you." After she left, I stood in my driveway for a long time, looking at my house, my truck, my tools, the hands that built things, the hands Kellan had dismissed as embarrassing. I wasn't embarrassed. The charges were filed the following week. 6 counts of fraud, 2 counts of identity misuse, 3 counts of obtaining money under false pretenses. Exactly as Detective Carver had outlined. The arraignment was scheduled for 2 weeks out. I didn't plan to attend, but Lorna called and convinced me. "He's your son. You should be there." "Why?" "Because you need to see this through to the end. Not for him, for yourself." I thought about it. Okay. The arraignment was held in Multnomah County Circuit Court. I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as Kellan was led in by his attorney, a tired-looking public defender who'd clearly drawn the short straw. Kellan looked worse than he had at the summit. Hollow-eyed, gaunt, wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit. He didn't see me at first. When he did, his face went through several emotions: shock, anger, fear, resignation. The judge read the charges, asked how he pleaded. "Not guilty, Your Honor," the public defender said. The prosecutor objected to bail, citing flight risk and the seriousness of the charges. The judge set bail at $200,000. Kellan's attorney argued it down to $100,000, still more than Kellan could afford. He was remanded back to custody. As they let him out, he looked at me one more time, mouthed something, I couldn't tell what. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I pushed through them without comment, got to my truck, drove away. That night, Lorna called. "You were there." "I was." "How do you feel?" "I don't know." That's honest, at least. We talked for a while about nothing in particular. She told me about a new consulting project in Boulder. I told her about the native plant restoration work I was getting back into. Normal conversation. A reminder that life continued even after you'd torn your family apart. Before we hung up, she said, "Tanner, I want you to know something. What you did, exposing Kellan, making sure the truth came out, that took real courage. Most people would have just walked away, let him keep lying. You didn't. That matters." "Does it?" "Yeah, it does." The weeks passed. Kellan's trial was set for early spring. His attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecutor wasn't interested. The evidence was too strong, too public. They wanted to make an example. I went back to work. Took on small projects. A residential garden redesign, some consulting work for a parks department in Gresham. Nothing major, but enough to keep me busy, keep my mind occupied. Sometimes I'd drive past Kellan's house in Laurelhurst. It was empty now, foreclosure sign in the yard. The luxury vehicles were gone. The perfectly manicured lawn had started to brown. I didn't feel satisfaction looking at it. Didn't feel anything, really. In late November, I got an unexpected call from Lana. "Tanner, it's Lana. Please don't hang up." I almost did, but something made me listen. "What do you want?" "I'm calling because I need you to know something. What Kellan did, the fraud, the lies, using your credentials, I didn't know the full extent of it. I knew we were struggling financially, but I didn't know he was forging documents or stealing your work. You encouraged him to ask me for money. You smiled when he called me embarrassing." Silence. Then, "I know. I was terrible. I was so focused on maintaining appearances, on our lifestyle, that I didn't see what was really happening, and I'm sorry." "Are you calling because you're sorry, or because you want something?" "Both, I guess. I'm calling because Kellan's attorney says he might take a plea deal. 8 years in prison instead of going to trial and risking 15, and he needs—" Her voice cracked. "He needs his father." "I'm not his father anymore." "Yes, you are. Family ties don't disappear just because someone went off course." He didn't go off course, Lana. He broke the law, repeatedly, intentionally, and he showed me nothing but disdain. I know, you're right, but he's still your son, and he's going to prison. And I think you need to decide if you can live with never speaking to him again. After we hung up, I sat with that question for a long time. Could I live with never speaking to Kellan again? The answer was yes. Easily. He'd made his choices. I'd made mine. We were done. But there was a difference between what I could live with and what I should do. I called Lorna. If I went to see Kellan, would that be stupid? Probably, but it might also give you closure. I don't need closure. Everyone needs closure, Tanner. The jail visit was arranged through Kellan's attorney. I drove to the detention center on a gray December afternoon, checked in at the visitor's desk, went through security. They led me to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. Kellan was brought in a minute later, wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. We sat across from each other. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Finally, Kellan said, "You came." "I came. Why?" "I don't know." Another silence. Then, "I'm taking the plea deal. 8 years. My attorney says I'll probably serve 6 with good behavior." "Okay. That's all you have to say? Okay?" "What do you want me to say, Kellan? That I'm sorry? That I wish things were different? I don't. You earned every consequence coming your way." His jaw tightened. "You destroyed me." "No, I exposed you. You destroyed yourself years ago. I just made sure everyone else could see it. You're my father. You were supposed to protect me. I was supposed to raise you to be honest, decent, capable. I failed. You failed, and here we are." Kellan looked down at his cuffed hands. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that. Really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate you. I don't love you anymore either. I don't feel anything for you. You're just someone I used to know." He looked up, eyes wet. "That's worse than hate." "Maybe." We sat in silence for the rest of the visit. When the guard came to take him back, Kellan stood slowly. "I won't contact you again," he said. "After this, we're done. That's what you want, right?" "That's what we both need." He nodded, turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. "For what it's worth, Dad, you were right. About everything. I was a fraud. I did use you. I did take you for granted. And I'm sorry I waited until I had no choice to admit it. Goodbye, Kellan." He left. I sat in the empty room for a few more minutes, then walked out of the detention center into the cold afternoon. I drove home, made dinner, went to bed, and I slept better than I had in months. Winter settled into Portland with its usual gray insistence. I kept working, kept living, kept moving forward. The story of my public confrontation with Kellan faded from the news cycle, replaced by other scandals, other tragedies. Life went on. In January, I got a call from the state licensing board. "Mr. Walden, this is Director Patterson. I wanted to personally thank you for bringing the credential fraud to our attention. Your evidence was instrumental in helping us identify systemic weaknesses in our verification process." I'm glad it helped. "We've implemented new protocols because of this case. Digital verification, random audits, stricter penalties for misuse. What your son did expose real vulnerabilities. In a way, you've made the entire profession more secure." After we hung up, I thought about that. My son's fraud had led to industry-wide reform. Something good had come from something terrible. Small consolation, but consolation nonetheless. February brought unexpected contact from former colleagues. People I hadn't talked to in years, reaching out to say they'd followed the story, they understood what I'd done, they respected the courage it took. Not everyone agreed. Some thought I'd gone too far, that family loyalty should have trumped public exposure, but enough people supported my decision that I stopped feeling quite so isolated. Mrs. Chen invited me to dinner one evening. Her grandson was visiting, a landscape architecture student at Oregon State. The kid asked me questions about native plant restoration, about career paths, about the industry. "My professor mentioned your name," he said. "Said you were one of the best in the field. Said what happened with your son was tragic, but that it didn't change your professional contributions." I appreciated that, being seen as more than just the man who exposed his son's fraud. In March, Kellan was formally sentenced. 8 years, as the plea deal specified. The judge was harsh during sentencing, talking about betrayal of trust, abuse of professional credentials, the damage done to clients and the industry. I didn't attend. Read about it in the paper instead. That same week, I got an offer to teach a course at Portland Community College. Introduction to Landscape Architecture. 1 night a week, helping new students learn the fundamentals. I accepted. Teaching turned out to be exactly what I needed. Working with young people who were genuinely interested in the field, who asked thoughtful questions, who wanted to build things properly from the start. One student asked me about ethics in professional practice. I told them about credential fraud, about the importance of doing your own work, about how shortcuts always catch up with you eventually. I didn't mention Kellan by name, didn't need to. Spring came, Portland shook off its gray winter coat and bloomed. I worked on a park restoration project in St. John's, helped a young couple design a native plant garden for their new house, continued teaching. Life had settled into a rhythm, not the life I'd imagined, not the family I'd hoped for, but a life that was mine, built on truth instead of lies. The Portland Green Tech Summit came around again in late May, 1 year since the confrontation that had ended everything. I wasn't planning to attend, but the organizers reached out personally. Mr. Walden, we'd be honored if you'd consider presenting this year, perhaps something on professional ethics and accountability in landscape architecture. I thought about it, going back to that same stage, that same auditorium where I'd destroyed my son's career, reclaiming that space not with anger, but with knowledge, with experience, with hard-won wisdom. I'll do it, I said. The weeks leading up to the summit were busy. I prepared a presentation on ethical practice, on the importance of integrity, on what happens when professionals prioritize image over substance. I didn't mention Kellan explicitly, but everyone would know what I was talking about. The morning of the summit, I dressed carefully. Same dark pants and sport coat I'd worn a year ago. Same determination, different purpose. I arrived early, walked through the convention center, past the exhibit booths, through the corridors. Some people recognized me, nodded respectfully. A few came up to shake my hand, thank me for what I'd done. You made the industry better, one older architect told me. That took guts. At 2 p.m., I walked onto the same stage where I'd confronted Kellan. The auditorium was full. Maybe not quite as full as last year, but close. The moderator introduced me. Polite applause. I stepped to the podium, looked out at the audience, adjusted the microphone. Thank you for having me. My name is Tanner Walden. Some of you know me from my work in environmental restoration and landscape architecture. Others know me from other circumstances. A few uncomfortable laughs. I'm here today to talk about professional ethics, about integrity, about what we owe to our clients, to our profession, and to ourselves. I spoke for 30 minutes, talked about the importance of doing your own work, about the long-term cost of short-term shortcuts, about how reputation is built slowly and destroyed quickly. I talked about accountability, about owning your mistakes, about the difference between protecting family and enabling harmful behavior. And I talked about rebuilding, about how even after catastrophic failure, there's always a path forward if you're willing to face the truth. When I finished, the applause was genuine, sustained, not just polite acknowledgement, but real appreciation. During the Q&A session, someone asked, "Do you have any regrets about how you handled the situation with your son?" I thought about it, gave an honest answer. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my son made choices that forced my hand, but I don't regret exposing the truth. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Another person asked, "Have you had any contact with Kellan since his sentencing?" No, and I don't expect to. After the presentation, several young professionals approached me. They wanted advice, mentorship, guidance. I gave them my contact information, told them to reach out if they had questions. Walking to my truck later, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Content. Not happy exactly, not triumphant, but content with my choices, with my path, with the life I was building from the ruins of the old one. I drove home through late afternoon traffic, parked in my driveway, looked at my small paid-off house in Selwood. This was enough. Inside, I made dinner, sat on my back porch with a beer, watched the sun set through the trees. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. "Mr. Walden, this is Emma Chen. I was in your audience today at the summit. I'm a first-year landscape architecture student, and I was wondering if you'd consider being my advisor for a thesis project on urban ecological restoration." I smiled. "I'd be happy to. Tell me about your project." We talked for 40 minutes about native plants and watershed management and the future of sustainable urban design, about building things that mattered, that lasted, that made the world slightly better. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness. The summit organizers sent me an email. They wanted me to present again next year, possibly join their ethics advisory board. I said yes to both. I'd lost a son, but I'd found a purpose. And in the end, that was enough.